Yeah, I have already started broadcasting. Then what do I do? Sorry? Yeah, there is a lesson going on. No, no, it has not started. We are like there's a power cut, so we are waiting for it to start. Yeah, it's muted. The camera and everything is muted, so there's no problem. Yeah, yeah, I know. So I have already muted it. Yes, yes. Yeah, yeah, I saw it, right? Yeah, yeah. Playlist. Okay. Yes, I got playlist. Yeah. Yes, yes. Yeah. Okay. I have yeah, I got that and I got edit. Wait, no, it's below. Okay. Yes, yes. Yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes. So I'm clicking on edit again. Hmm. I'm getting Gyan course on introduction to design thinking. Add video. Yes. Yes. And to watch now. The add. Yes, yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. I have added that. So now I'll start the broadcast. ये झलक the camera is not working. Huh? The camera, I think. Just look at the camera. It's not coming on. Okay, it's on. No, no. Yeah.
Okay, good. Back to business. So let's this afternoon talk about in detail about this process. Now, this is a presentation which is also in the Canvas site. I sent an invitation, I think, to up to 6 of you anyway. I'm still haven't quite finished, but you'll all get an invite to this. So this, I mean, the session is titled Design Rhetoric, but in essence, what I want to talk about is the language and process. Right? Now, this morning and yesterday, we kind of made a head start. We've actually kind of gone ahead and dealt with some of these issues. So what we're doing here in this session is what is often taught in a compressed way over about 3 hours if I'm working with industry. I'm going to break it up into sections, and we're going to sort of follow that process. So this is a presentation which is actually developed by IDEO, and it's linked to the design kit, and it takes you through that process. So I thought it's important that we do that, and we adapt it a little bit to our needs. So you'll notice straight up that design kit, and IDEO talks about the goal of the workshop being to use human-centered design process to identify the best options for healthy living. So we said at the beginning of this week, we focus on this promoting healthy lifestyles and healthy living. We've moved on a little bit this morning into the space of campus and healthy lifestyles. So, but we're kind of still working in that same ballpark. What we will cover, and we won't cover it all in one go, we'll cover some until start at 4 o'clock. We will go through the first space, the inspiration space, and look at what goes on there. We look at the mindsets and methods of human-centered design, a bit of hands-on practice that we'll do some class, and just so that you get a solid foundation in the process. And then on Monday, we will move to the ideation phase, and I will also give you a brief kind of workshop on that, and then we'll look at the implementation phase probably towards Wednesday. So in terms of a workshop, when I run this with industry people or in schools or somewhere else, we kind of condense. We're trying to give people in a short frame of time, a lot of information about a process that usually takes months or years to actually roll out. So it's not doing this workshop, which is what a lot of people do, will not make you an expert. Problem is, many people do go away from these workshops in the US or Australia or the UK thinking that they're experts, but that takes more than just a workshop. So we break this into a little bit about why talk about human-centered design, talk about the 3 phases which we mentioned before: inspiration, ideation, implementation. Looking today at inspiration, this idea of framing this challenge, research and creating a plan and field research. So, and then moving on to the later stages. We'll come on to that. In addition to being an approach which is optimistic, it's an approach which takes questions, critical questions, and risk-taking are encouraged. And that's because we want to fail early and cheaply rather than fail expensively, when we're too far in on the project and we've invested too much time. So we talk about human-centered design. I'll see if this mine's right. Oh. Yes, okay. Right.
Human-centered design is a creative approach to problem solving, one that starts with people and ends with innovative solutions tailored to meet their needs. When you understand the people you're trying to reach and then design from their perspective, not only will you arrive at unexpected answers, but you'll come up with ideas that they'll embrace. Human-centered design is both how you think and what you do. It's a process that consists of 3 phases: inspiration, ideation, and implementation. The inspiration phase is about learning on the fly, opening yourself up to creative possibilities, and trusting that as long as you remain grounded in the desires of the people you're designing for, your ideas will evolve into the right solution. In the ideation phase, you come up with lots of ideas. Some too crazy to work, some too crazy not to try, and you refine them, tossing out the bad and improving the good. Making things helps you learn, grow, and test your ideas. Building a simple prototype gets your idea tangible and gives you something to put right back into the hands of the folks you're designing for. Without their input, you won't know if your solution is on target or how to evolve your idea. Keep iterating, testing, and integrating feedback until you've got everything just right. During the implementation phase, you'll build partnerships, shore up your business model, and get your idea out into the world, which was always the goal in the first place. Anyone can practice human-centered design, and everyone benefits, because it gets us all to solutions that are adopted and embraced.
Okay, so I mean, we talked about some of those aspects anyway, but there it is kind of packaged nicely in a short clip. So what it's about, where it's, what are some of the key elements. We talked before about, in terms of this process, that it's finding the sweet spot, if you like, which is that overlapping center space between what is desirable, that's the design difference, what is viable from a business point of view, and what's feasible from a technological point of view. I should add, if we talk about feasible and technology, that can be too narrowly interpreted. So if I think of Joe's work on the EV bus, for example, we all know that out there there are projects being worked on which are going to go mainstream in the next couple of years. Okay, we don't actually want to design for the immediate present, because we want to design for that future which is coming in terms of technology and business. Okay, so when I say feasible, I don't mean what I could go and buy right now in the store somewhere. I'm talking also about the horizon of possibilities. I'll give you a case, is that battery storage for solar panels is getting mainstreamed in Australia. It's going to be a bit of a game changer if it really happens, because for people like me, and I'm really excited about this, I get a battery and I've already got solar panels on my roof, but I get a system and I disconnect from the grid. I'm independent. Okay, and they're also looking at microarrays. So I get a 6 kilowatt system on the top of my roof. It's storing into a modular battery system. I don't need the energy company anymore, and I'm independent. And I want independence. If battery goes mainstream, which it will, it's just a question of time. And also, recently the state government where I live is saying that they will make a $5,000 subsidy towards a battery system. Okay? It's going to cost me, I've already got some estimates for that. The battery system I can get that would make me independent would cost me about $10,000. If I'm getting a $5,000 subsidy, I'm going to buy it. Payback is going to be really good. So what I'm saying is, what you want to do is design for a world where battery storage is mainstream. Understand? So when we say feasible, we don't mean right now. We mean that what's around the corner. So if we look at we think about the process, talk about the kind of attitudes that go with human-centered design thinking. These are terms that IDEO uses, and Stanford and a few other people, and they're quite useful in terms of identifying an attitude. We have this thing called creative confidence. So this is confidence in your own ability to be creative and therefore to engage in the process. We assume that most people can be creative, are able to be creative. That doesn't mean you have to be an artistic genius. I'm a case of when I'm terrible. When I'm in a design class, people expect I can draw stuff. I say no. I hire somebody to do that. So it's a little embarrassing, but creative confidence is about this belief that most people have. Some people lost it, but can get that creativity back. Empathy is important. So that's understanding people you're building for, understanding their world, their expectations, their experiences. This idea of embracing ambiguity, which is throughout the process really important, because often right at the start you have a problematic situation, but not everything is clear. Things are ambiguous, and you have to be able to accept that and work with that kind of lack of definition. And that's uncomfortable for some people. Item 4 there, make it, is that we've got to get tangible at some point in this process. I mean, that makes sense to engineers and lots of people, but making it means we have to move from ideas in this first phase towards tangible prototypes, tangible concepts that people can look at and interact with, so that we can begin to find out whether we're on the right track. So we've got to make it at some point. Learn from failure, we talked about that, really important. Notice it's not just fail, it's learn from failure. So failure as a prompt, controlled, strategic failure, I call it, from which we learn and therefore progress and develop. Iteration, that is coming back to revising things and modifying them and keeping the ideas machine turning. And finally, optimism. We talked about that early on, this idea that we believe about the fact we can come up with something. Even given the apparently intractable politics of campus administration, we've got to stay optimistic. So again, so 3 phases: inspiration, ideation, implementation. We talked about that. 3 spaces, I should say, sorry, and that's important. So this idea of spaces is important. A space of play, it's a space of experimentation, where we work with the different stakeholders, and we try to move towards a solution. Another way of visualizing this process, in addition to just kind of spaces, is actually to focus on the amount of energy and time we spend on each space and what is happening in terms of ideas. So if you look at the image here, you see that the front end of this process, the inspiration phase, is time heavy. We spend a lot of time in here, which means we don't jump in and 2 seconds later start drawing a solution. We actually have to spend time and energy, and that front end is a busy time bound period. And I was talking to one of my ex-students who's working for a design agency in the city, and I've got former graduates, PhD students, and master's students working in different countries, and it's always nice to catch up and see what's happening. And look, the truth is, whether it's Australia or the US or anywhere else, there are companies still who will say, we're not going to pay for you to waste time at the front end doing a lot of sort of human research and spending time at it. We need to get the job done. We need to get it done quickly. And so you have to realize, you've got that battle in some cases. There are other organisations which one term used to describe them as design-led organisations. Procter and Gamble is a case in point. Deloitte is another. These are companies who understand design and who are prepared to pay for front-end research because they don't want to get it wrong. They're going to invest lots of money. So, you just a case of it. So at the start of this process, we're diverging, if you like. Diverging in the sense that we are trying to generate different ideas, concepts related to the problem that we're focused on. We're not trying to narrow down this convergence. We're trying to actually open up. So here, divergence at the front end is opening up, staying open to the possibilities and the ideas that are coming in. Drawing that sort of line. The beginning of the ideation phase is where you have a defined problem. So the ideation phase right at the start here starts with a defined design problem, not just a defined social problem, defined design problem that allows you to generate potential design responses. By design, I mean designing a business case, designing a service, possibly designing a product. And so it's a period of not divergence, but convergence through that ideation phase. You're starting to select, starting to focus. Because we want to keep a few ideas at the top. Even at the ideation phase, we are still holding a couple of concepts and ideas in play, and we're presenting these and refining them. We reach a point at which it gets to implementation. This is where we make a choice. We make a choice at the end of this process to develop one of our concepts into a particular prototype that we put out to market to test. And by saying that, you have to realize that the choice that you make, the service and the product and the change that you design and what you put out to the market is a choice. It's a choice among other options. And you could have gone a number of ways, but you choose because of time and everything else to develop one. And so it's good enough. Good enough to solve the problem. This is a logic of good enough. It's not a logic of this is the perfect answer to the engineering problem. So that is harmless. So we've talked about design kit, what it offers, the way in which it breaks down the process and allows you to have a look at to make some choices. Talked about that. So let's talk about the inspiration phase in particular. So that's up until Monday, what you're working on. We've got 4 things that we are trying to achieve in this stage. We're framing our design challenge. Framing, which is what we did early on. Okay? We're doing research. Now, this is applied research. This is not sit at your desk research. This is applied, practice-oriented, design-oriented research. So we are talking to people. We're looking for ideas that are similar. Analogous inspiration is just looking for inspiration, for example, in similar spaces, because that can be an insight that we can use. And we can copy ideas where solutions have come up in other areas, which can then work in our area. We look at the extremes and mainstreams. Yeah, we talked about this before. I'm talking here about we need to take, as far as possible, everybody into consideration, and try to design what's sometimes called universal design, if we can, for both ends of the spectrum, if we can. We've got interview techniques where we create a plan, which tells us the way forward. I think we've done some of that. Do field research, come back, go into that next phase. So we've covered some of this ground. One of the things that is important in this early stage is to this idea of understanding people, and to come up with ideas that can change lives. We talk to people, they tell us stuff about what we ask them. we watch them eating, exercising, walking, whatever. So we're looking at what's said and what's done, put it that way. What we're interested in from a design and from a sort of research point is the thinking behind the saying and the feeling behind the doing. Because whether we use the term discourse or some other term or narrative, when people talk, when they tell you something, behind what they're saying is some storyline, some narrative, some discourse perhaps that they're speaking from. So they talk like a student about this. The other thing is we watch, as part of the research process, we might look at people doing things, eating, exercising, and so on and so forth, and we're interested in the emotions that are attached to that. Why feelings and emotions are important? Because this is what we designed for. We designed to catch. If you think about the success of whether it's the latest Samsung phone or something else. It's about engaging people's emotions, and that's where we get sustainable design. So, framing the design challenge. We've already done this. I was going to do this one earlier, but here it is again. So we.
We'll come back to this.
Yeah. Okay. Shall I carry on?
Please carry on.
Okay. So we did this. So we need to frame the design challenge, and when we frame it, notice how it looks. Look at this phrase. Actually, this is a really good one. That, I take in lots of spaces. This, how might we? Okay, those first three words. How might we do something? How might we? Blah blah blah. So that framing is not only an ideas framing; it's a sort of a linguistic framing, because it says, we need to formulate the problem that we're looking at as a how might we. Notice it's we, not I, and notice that it's using this, this modal might as a kind of an open idea about suggestions and possibilities. So that's a good way of framing what we're doing. How might we do this? How might we improve health in everyday life? Notice when you look at that as well, you look at that framing. That's a framing of a kind of broad situational problem. It's not a design brief. And that's the beginning of the challenge process, is to keep that open. So we go into research, and I'm saying to you, up until Monday, this is what you want to be doing, and up until now. And the place to look for inspiration is obviously with people. It's sometimes talking to or reading from experts. It's about immersion. So, we all just had lunch, so that was pretty immersive. In that space, when you're working on, not on a routine thing like that, but some other contracted project, when you're doing immersion, you often join in that space and observe how is the game played. It was really interesting. I was sitting at the table with the food in front of me, and I was talking to Tej about the gap between. So we said this morning that food on campus was kind of unhealthy, and I'm looking at the food in front of me, and for me, it's not unhealthy.
So, but then you're eating very different kinds.
Okay. But what I'm saying is, sure, there's another conversation about that. But it's an opportunity. Often we So then we had a conversation about what that means and why might it. So the point is that immersion, what immersion often does, allows us to do is to question assumptions, or at least to qualify them. That's a good thing. And then the other, we talk about analogous inspiration. I mentioned that before. We're talking here about innovative, say, enterprise ideas to improve the health, the nutrition experience of students, so they eat better and feel better, and all of that is involved. When we look for inspiration, we might find in a related area of sport or cooking or something else, we might find some enterprise ideas that we can learn from and bring on board. So, that's important. Yeah.
Immersion is similar to participant observation.
Yeah. So if I'm working in a hospital setting and I'm trying to come up with some solution for better patient satisfaction, I dress up as a nurse. I dress up. That's just very funny, that story. I can tell you a story. So I used to work in a medical school, University of Melbourne. I worked in the education unit for the faculty of medicine, and so I was a doctor, of course, because I had a PhD, and so I had a white coat as well. And so I would go through the hospital and it said Dr. Mellis. People would come up to me sometimes and ask me if about medication and things like that, because I have a PhD in education. So, or it's like when I get on the plane, and sometimes I have doctor there, and sometimes I don't bother. But people ask me if I can resuscitate somebody. So immersion means basically, dressing up and going into the space and being that person to kind of get a better idea. If that makes sense. So if we can, when we look at, we talked, I think, before, the early adopters, the middle group, and then the late adopters who we can't do much with. This idea of extremes and mainstreams is similar, not exactly the same, but similar. And where possible, if you think about your healthy eating and some of your enterprise ideas, you would like the most people possible to take part. You'd like those early adopters and also the middle group as well to take part and to drag everybody along. So that's so this at least as far as design thinking is taught, we talk about understanding the whole person, understanding the context, when we interview, these are hard things to do. I have a number of them. I've got 7 PhD students at the moment myself. 3 of them have been working in context of domestic energy in Australia and sustainability. And one of the processes that they've used is they've gone into homes of Australians, and they've spent time there trying to understand energy from the point of view of the household, from the point of view of practice, not from the point of view of policy or energy bills, but trying to understand the social practices around energy use. Because if you don't understand the household and the sort of needs and desires and aspirations, then you can't get change to happen. Because energy in homes is about taking a bath, it's cooking, it's all sorts of things. Okay, so I have a number of students who do this kind of contextual type of analysis. So we just do a little exercise to kind of nail some of this down. So just turn to your neighbour and ask them, traditional interview, one question. I'll give you 2 minutes and then you can swap around. What gets in the way of you being healthy? Talk to the person next to you. Okay, so we talked about some of this morning. Yeah, we were trying to get at this issue about on-campus. So we kind of did some of this. I'm just doing it again so that you see it as part of the process. Yeah, all right. So there are probably a ton of different things that. So this is what we normally do in this sort of context. We have an interview, we have an interview question, and we're trying to get insights through interviews. So that's the standard way to do this, and it works okay. But what the design thinking approach suggests is that there are other ways of getting answers to that question which might inform us more. And so they talk about these techniques, which it's not all rocket science here. Some of it's quite obvious, but rather than just having a standard interview, we can kind of we push things with like the Russian dolls, the 5 whys. So we ask somebody that question, they tell us something, and then we go why, and they give us an answer, and we say why is it the priority. So we drill down. Yeah. So what we're doing is we're picking up on something somebody said. We push it. We push that agenda. It's a bit like when my daughters were 4 and 5 years old. Everything was about why. So it can be. You can overdose on why, but in the interview context, drill down. So somebody says something to you, you wanna push it. Don't just write down the first thing. Look for those root causes. We were doing that this morning as well. Yeah. Second thing is, some people can articulate a lot of these things. My wife says. So she works at another university, and she's currently just finishing her PhD in education. And she said that she was just saying to me the other day, when it comes to thinking through a lot of the ideas that she's working on about library futures, she finds, and she's not an artist, but she finds a lot of the time that drawing diagrams is just way easier to get the ideas out there and to look at the connections, and then to be able to look at it and go, draw the lines and that sort of stuff. So when you're trying to get at some idea, for some people, drawing is as good, if not better. The other thing, and these days, with your mobile phone, this is easy to do, or easier to do. You ask people. When you're thinking about healthy lifestyles, we've talked about this. You say, well, show me what is that? You say, tell me about, or show me some pictures of that represent to you feeling healthy or unhealthy. So actually looking for visual cues of photos, and then the other technique is to embed the question in a story. So tell me a story. We as human beings, we are We're very driven in a lot of things that we do to tell stories and to narrate. We see our lives in terms of a storyline. And so, rather than just a standard interview or even show me pictures, getting people to tell you a story about when they really felt good about themselves or something gets a narrative out there, which can be really insightful. So the point about this is, with your techniques, don't just limit yourself to standard interview question set. Think about alternative ways of getting those insights. So valuable over the next few days. Yeah.
So, five eyes and tell me stories. These ideally should be done in 4 different settings. At least people, you can get them in one place.
Yeah.
We can't go to that place. And then I do each exercise on one particular day. We cannot do them in the same day.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, if you look at the the case from Sweep's, the slum redevelopment case, there were quite a few techniques used in that which are similar to this. The idea of getting people together to visualize, their needs, and this is not a new idea. And especially, I think about, especially with, say, children. If you work with children and you want concepts, the visual is much easier to work with. Think about who you're working with. Think about the different kind of visual sources that you can get people to give you to tell you about what you want to know. So we do that kind of field research, and then we come back to our challenge. We frame it in terms of a team setting, which you've got now. You plan your research, and planning basically means deciding who you're going to talk to, where you might go, and what questions you might ask. Who are you going to talk to? Experts, students, people working in the canteen. Who are those stakeholders? Who do you have to talk to? Who do you might you talk to? Where are you going to go? So that reminds us that stuff happens in a space. Okay? It happens in environments. You have to understand those spaces. Where are you going to go to find out? And then what questions are you going to ask? Very important. So that's the and we have this sort of broad goal. So important to do that, and you've got a couple of days to kind of narrow down what you're doing. Tips for doing that, at least in the standard model, is to be proactive. In the context of an interview, being proactive really means kind of needing things, but not allowing people to talk, but staying, on agenda. And also, when you hear something, I do a lot of politics, sort of semi-structured studies over the past 10 years, 15 years. And proactive also means you'll often be in a situation, somebody will tell you something. You've got to keep your ears open to these ideas that need follow-up. Don't just stick to the script. Listen to what somebody says to you. And, like the 5 whys, kind of probe it. Be listening for possible ideas that you need to. So be proactive in that sense. Respect other people's expertise. There's nothing worse than an interview where it sounds like you're the expert, you know everything, and you just want to extract some stuff from people about the basic facts. And you obviously don't think they know it. So that's not going to get insightful information. That's just to confirm your own stereotypes and prejudices. Capture what you learn, which is so much easier these days. My fundamental research tool, and I have some apps that I use as well, is my mobile phone. I just do everything in terms of field research off my phone. I have a few attachments and accessories, for capture, but the phone and the apps that I use is for interviews and video clips and everything. Obviously there's ethics about that as well, photos, things like that, which you need to bear in mind. It often helps also when you're kind of starting out in this area within a team and you're doing an interview, and particularly when you do a contextual interview. By contextual, I mean interviewing somebody in the space which you're interested in. There's a difference between you sitting in your office and interviewing somebody about some abstract idea, which they can talk about in the abstract, and you interviewing students in the environment where you're trying to make a change. That's contextual. And in that space, you can point to things. In the space, there are things going on that that matter. So it often helps to have somebody with you, in the sense of somebody focusing on documenting, somebody actually leading the interview. It's very hard, as many of you may know, but it's very hard to actually lead an interview, stay on task, and listen for all those cues, and at the same time be thinking about attention on the actual interview and making sure it's really good. I've got some recording device capturing that, and I'm going to spend a couple of hours at least on each interview. This is not for applied projects, but also research projects. Really understanding what I heard. That's difficult. You have a team member with you, they can listen out for sort of ideas and insights while you concentrate on running the interview well. So field research. The field research, we've already got it. You've already got a task. We talked about that this morning. The project here, and welcome back is for Monday, by the way. So, what I suggest, you do at this point is, and I'm going to float around a little bit with this. That's all I wanted to talk about today. The phase I want, space I want to focus on. But I think just a little bit of time, perhaps, on your next steps for the next couple of days to get the inspiration phase done, to understand the environment and the people, ideas around this challenge of campus healthy living and eating. That's the main thing maybe for the next half hour. Okay? Questions? Sorry, questions? Figure out again what are you looking for, who are you going to talk to, what spaces are you going to visit, what images can you either already find or capture, what examples already exist of solutions similar to what you're looking for, all of these things, and have a look at design kits, other options for methods as well. Because when we come back on Monday, what I want you to show me, is how you've understood the space that you're interested in.
So, design thinking is a way of solving problems, solving social enterprise problems. So, let's consider, what's the alternative of design thinking? Like, design thinking is great, but let's say I don't want design thinking.
Yeah.
What are the alternatives that I have to solve the same problem, but
Yeah.
not with that particular?
Look, there are lots of ways you can solve problems per se. There are also, you don't need design thinking. Come up with a great business idea and develop it into. It's not the answer to all innovation and social development. It's a particular approach which does certain things that a lot of processes do. I mean, talking to people, spending time, that's not kind of special and unique to design. Other people know that is important. But I suppose what is different is that there are a few features of the model that help to ensure success and, rather than failure later on, such as, spending enough time at the front end to really understand the problem you're facing and the opportunities rather than jumping in. We come back to this thing about so many enterprises failing, in a 5-year time period. And one of the reasons that happens is they didn't do their front-end work. That's one reason. Lots of others.
So, like, practically, I was trying to say was instead of like design thinking, what are other XYZ thinking?
Yeah, right. Okay.
What are those XYZs?
Oh, okay. Agile is another model with sort of phases in a sequence. You have people have been talking about Six Sigma for years. In the business area, that's another staged process, if you like. There are probably others I can think of. Lean, for example, yeah. So each of these, usually when you listen to them, each of the different options for sort of sequencing the innovation process, they usually emphasize something particular. So you take lean, for example. The emphasis is on lean, efficient, efficient use of resources and so on and so forth, and lean business models and so on. Agile is about being fast. It's prototyping really fast. I've talked at Agile conferences about similarities between design thinking and Agile, for example. So the Agile crowd is very much interaction design. These are the guys who do IT, rapid prototyping of solutions for customers. It's very, so it's kind of narrow in terms of the sector, and it's about, as I say, rapid prototyping. And then every other kind of model tends to emphasize something, some kind of. What design thinking says is that their emphasis is on the human-centered. They say they take a proper account of the sort of the social and the human dimension. We're not that. We do rapid prototyping like Agile, but we do it as part of a bigger system. It's not all about just rapid prototyping. We do rapid prototyping because we do it cheaply. We do it on paper. We do it with, we don't sit at Autodesk and spend hours building a prototype and we do this. We prototype an interface or we prototype something cheaply, rapidly, so that we can quickly test whether we need to develop it further. So everything is, every different model has its advantages.
Yeah.
My question is, the question was, what are the barriers that what are the what are the what are the barriers that
Hello. No, no, he changed it, please. Hello. Go ahead.
the question is, what are the barriers that prevent a healthy lifestyle?
Yeah.
And we had asked 5 people what are the, and they picked up these 5 options. Now there are certain people who said pollution in the city is a barrier for a healthy lifestyle.
Okay.
Lack of pedestrian spaces so that I can do jogging or walking is not there.
Oh, right.
So when we take up these particular issues,
Yeah.
should we also consider the scope of the people who are going to implement it later? It's beyond their scope to do certain things like pollution. So
Right.
how do we pick up?
Yeah, good point. Which we haven't really talked about. We kind of assumed is that we do need to set a scope or a boundary on what we're doing. So I would say, given that in the case you're talking about, given that while it's true what that person said, for them, and true in some general sense, that cities, urban planning, and the way people behave stops as a barrier to healthy lifestyles, then that's an urban planning or an urban design. That's another kind of sector problem, if you like. So, given that we, as part of the scoping of the problem, we're typically working in a hospital or on a site initially, a university campus site. Then the scope is narrower than that, really. And so is the target group. So the comment about the urban design problem, if you like, is kind of out of scope. It's probably related to what we're trying to do, because campuses also need design. But yeah, we do have to have a sufficiently defined geography and target group for it to make sense. Anything else? I think, well, just to kind of, in terms of the lecture thing, I think it's important, and I said this at the beginning, and you'll find it was in one of the slides I talked about this critique of design thinking, but also there was a very good article in the Economic Times about limitations, and this comes back to your question about different models of innovation. There is a critique of some projects that have used design thinking and haven't. People say it hasn't really achieved the results that people said. And so I always say to people, if you think that just by taking, this is the process methods, you think that by learning that in a workshop that you can then take that anywhere and solve all sorts of problems, then you haven't understood what we're doing here. This is a particularly well developed version of a creative approach to innovation that has worked quite well in lots of situations, but of itself as a method is not enough to achieve, you know, social innovation or anything else. It needs a hell of a lot more. It needs an understanding of, you know, local politics and economics and all sorts of stuff. Um, so that's a more complex question than just a few methods and sequences. So that's yeah, and that's something that you learn through experience.
So, are there any specific tools to do the convergence and divergence? Specific set of tools.
Oh yeah. So when we move from, especially when we have this initial stage where we try to go out to the field and talk to people and understand the space, whether it's experts or anybody else. So we get a whole lot of ideas, we generate a whole lot of ideas, and often we're in a team. And sometimes it's a design agency that's contracted to do this. I mean, this is what happens in the US and Australia all the time. All the design agencies I know that are doing this business, they get contracted by government, by business to spend time on the streets with the right people trying to understand and then generating enough ideas and then coming together in stakeholder meetings and workshops to then come up with ideas. So we one of the ways that we distinguish, we'll talk more about this on Monday when I talk about the ideation phase because that's where convergence happens. But one example of how convergence and divergence differ, you know about mind mapping, right? Draw bubbles and put concepts in the air and connect them somehow, yeah? Mind mapping. You know about brainstorm. But, so for a lot of people, they're the same thing. Mind mapping and brainstorm. Either way, you end up with a page with a whole lot of ideas and they're connected and they're in Make sense? Confused? Worried? Okay, so when we come back on, so you can spend a bit of time together now, but when we come back on, then you can ask me if you want specifically. Let me float around there and talk to you. When we come back on Monday, I need you to come back with a bag full of ideas. Probably.